In this interview series from the CQF Institute, we ask leading quants to reflect on their careers, the skills needed for quantitative finance, and to offer their views on the latest industry developments. What do you think are the most important future skills aspiring quants should acquire?
The first skill which I want to talk about is actually a general skill, and that's the ability to learn new things. I think that's really important because the skills that quants require evolves over time. So you can't just go to university and learn something and that will do for the rest of your career. You need to be able to learn new things, and you need to want to be able to learn new things. And similarly, the second general skill is you need to be able to adapt, because the environment keeps changing as well. So the company you're working in will change, the requirements and the business use cases will change over time too. So you need to keep upskilling yourself so that you can help the business solve its problems. In terms of more technical quant skills, which I think will be important going forward, machine learning is one that straight away comes to mind. And of course, there are many different aspects to machine learning, but knowing about supervised learning algorithms, unsupervised learning algorithms, generative models, and the ways that you can run the computing. So as in things like GPUs, TPUs, and programs like TensorFlow or Python, JAX, etc. Then related to machine learning is the broader concept of big data. So most financial organizations now are collecting a lot of data about themselves and about their customers and their products. And it often comes down to the quant's expertise to be able to extract useful information and insights from that data, usually via some form of machine learning techniques. The hand in hand with that is handling the big data, and therefore the big data databases, so things like NoSQL databases. And on the other end of that process, there's visualization techniques. You need to be able to present the insights that you're getting from the data in a way that the business can understand. Another new technology is quantum computing. This is an emerging technology, which is a computational method which will be exponentially more powerful than classical computers for the specific problems that quantum computing are good at. A few other areas that come to mind are things like algorithmic trading skills, algorithmic differentiation as a numerical method, function approximation using deep neural networks, and other techniques like XVA, in other words, the valuation adjustments that banks are now required to perform. These are all slightly more specific to the quant area where I was involved, which was the global markets and trading area. And of course, other parts of the bank, other divisions, all have specific technical skills that quants are required to have.
How did you begin your career in quant finance?
I started off my career or my studying by doing electronic engineering. I then went to Cambridge University in the UK to do a PhD in engineering, and that was actually focused on machine learning. And this was in the very early 1990s, so way before it was cool to be working on AI and machine learning. When I finished that and was trying to decide what to do next, I realized that all of the studying I had done had been engineering, maths, physics, computing. And one area that I knew nothing about was finance and economics. But by that time, I had spent such a long time at university studying that I didn't want to spend more time there. So I thought I can get a job at a bank and I will learn about finance on the job. The area of finance that I got into was derivatives. And that's because at that time in the early 1990s, again, the Black-Scholes theory had just come out in the few years before that, and people were trying to work out how to apply that in practice in banks. But because it was new, there was nobody that actually knew how to do it, and there were no courses at universities. So the people that the banks thought who would have the correct skills or the closest skills were either physicists or engineers who in their training had learned about partial differential equations and things like the heat equation, which ended up being very similar to the Black-Scholes type equations. And so those were the skills that banks hired to then work on this new market of derivatives. And so I went down to London, started working in a bank, and then carried on my whole career for over 20 years in banks. And it was a lot of fun.
How did your career progress into the field of quantum computing?
When I was working as a quant, I was head of the quant team at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia here in Sydney, Australia, where I now live. Part of my remit was to look at emerging technologies to see how they could help in terms of the large computational tasks which we had at the bank. So a few years before quantum computing, the technology of GPUs came along. We started to experiment with that in the quant team at the bank, could see the power of that, integrated it into our workflows, and were able to generate value for the bank from these improved techniques. And then along came quantum computing, which I'd always had some interest in because of the quantum physics I had done in my student days. And Commonwealth Bank started doing some early proof of concept type of projects, looking at some use cases and how they could get value from it using quantum computing technology. And I was involved in that, and I could then see how this was a great match to all the different skill areas that I loved. It covered quantum physics, it covered computers and programming, it covered the business side of developing applications that would give value to the business, and left finance, which we have now worked for over 20 years, and joined a quantum computing company. And that's what I've been doing for the last over 5 years now. And it's really great doing this nexus of combining my knowledge of the finance industry and the big computational problems that are in the finance industry with this new tool that's coming along with the potential to improve many of the algorithms which quants work with and which then deliver business value to the organization.
If you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself when you first started your career as a quant?
The advice I would give myself is do as many projects as you can, because this is the best way to learn new skills. And don't be afraid to rotate into different parts of the bank, of the organization, because each time you join a new team, you will again learn new skills, learn new techniques. And what this enables you to do is then each time you get given a new task or a new problem to solve, you have a much bigger toolbox of techniques and ways you can solve the problem, which means you ultimately end up being able to do it more efficiently, either doing it in less time or providing a better solution. And in my opinion, over time, as you get this broader view of how the different parts of the bank work and how they all fit together into the bank as a whole working, it makes you a more rounded quant. And it increases your value to the organization because you start to see how the broader problems that the bank has can be pulled together, and the solutions you generate cover a bigger part of the bank. So to do this in your career, you need to be patient. You need to spend some amount of time in each of these areas. And that is like a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. And that's how you develop deep skills and deep understanding in each area. And I think that over time, the broad view containing deep skills is as valuable, if not maybe even more so, than the extremely deep skills you would get if you only worked in one specific niche. Some more advice is be practical as a quant. My view is that quants are problem solvers in the bank with deep technical skills, but the solutions you provide to the business need to be practical as well. You can't get too bogged down in the extreme low-level detail, and in trying to resolve those issues, make your project take an extra 6 months or an extra year to get delivered. You need to have a good awareness of the balance between delivery and accuracy and quality. And that can vary for different projects or in different organizations, depending on the requirements. But the point is, it's a balance, and you need to get that right, wearing a business hat perspective. One final bit of advice is it's great if you can find a mentor. So this is somebody that you can chat to. Usually it's someone that's within the business, although it's often not actually within your specific area of the business, but a little bit removed, and it gives them a bit of independence. And what they help you with is they can give you advice and guidance about more about your career than any specific problem that you're trying to solve. And this can be very valuable when you're stuck in terms of trying to decide where to go next in terms of your career path and opportunities.